Football has always been more than just a sport. It's a stage where legends are made, where millions of fans look up to players as role models, as heroes, as people worth admiring.
The Brazilian goalkeeper accused of killing his girlfriend and feeding her to the dogs is back in the game.
But some of those players, men who had everything, made choices that took them far from the pitch and straight to a prison cell.
Adam Johnson was sentenced to 6 years in prison.
Today we're looking at 6 footballers whose careers ended in ways no one could have predicted when they first kicked a ball.
Dani Alves, guilty of f***ing a woman in a Barcelona nightclub.
Robinho. Let's start with someone who was once compared to Pelé himself. Even the name sounds like a highlight reel. Born in 1984 in São Vicente, Brazil, he was spotted by Pelé at just 12 years old and flagged as the next great Brazilian talent. And for a while, it looked like that prediction would come true. By 2002, at just 18, he led Santos to their first Campeonato Brasileiro title since Pelé's own era. He then moved to Real Madrid, won 2 La Liga titles, and in 2008 became the most expensive player in British football history at the time when Manchester City signed him for $32.5 million. On the very same day, the club was taken over by Sheikh Mansour's Abu Dhabi group. He later joined AC Milan, won Serie A in his first season there, and earned 100 caps for Brazil. He was a Copa America winner, a 2-time Confederations Cup champion, and at the 2007 Copa America, he finished as both the Golden Boot winner and the best player of the tournament. He was one of the most naturally gifted players of his generation, someone who made the ball look like an extension of his body. Then everything collapsed. In January 2013, while playing for AC Milan, Robinho and 5 other Brazilian men were accused of gang a 22-year-old Albanian woman at a nightclub in Milan. She had been celebrating her birthday. According to prosecutors, she was plied with alcohol until she was barely conscious before being assaulted multiple times. In 2017, an Italian court convicted Robinho and sentenced him to 9 years in prison. He appealed. The Milan Court of Appeals upheld the conviction in 2020, calling his actions a brutal humiliation of the victim. Italy's Supreme Court confirmed the sentence again in 2022, but Robinho was in Brazil, and Brazil does not extradite its own citizens, so Italy made a different request, asking Brazil to enforce the sentence at home. For years, Robinho lived freely while the case moved through Brazilian courts. He surrendered his passport in 2023. Then, in March 2024, Brazil's Superior Court of Justice voted 9-2 to uphold the Italian conviction and ordered him to serve his sentence in Brazil. Within days, he was arrested at his home in Santos and taken to the Tremembé Penitentiary in São Paulo, a prison known for housing high-profile inmates, including murderers and corrupt politicians. Throughout all of it, Robinho maintained that the was consensual. He told Brazilian television that racism was behind his conviction in Italy, but leaked audio recordings told a very different story. In one, Robinho told a friend he didn't care at all because the woman was completely drunk and had no idea what had happened. In another, a friend described a sexual act, and Robinho's response dismissed any wrongdoing entirely. As of early 2025, Robinho was still behind bars. His daily routine reportedly includes playing football in the yard, gardening, reading, and learning how to repair electronics. Under Brazilian prison rules, 12 hours of work can reduce a sentence by 1 day. In January 2026, a São Paulo court approved a 160-day sentence reduction based on his work and studies, meaning he could potentially be released around the end of 2032 instead of 2033. His lawyer described him as an exemplary prisoner. His son, Robinho Jr., who signed with Santos at just 17, visits him roughly once a month. The man once called Brazil's heir to Pelé now spends his days in a shared cell in a São Paulo prison, tending a garden and repairing radios. The distance between those two realities is almost impossible to measure. Robinho's case shocked the football world, but it wasn't the only time a famous footballer used his celebrity to exploit someone far more vulnerable. Adam Johnson. England international Adam Johnson did something disturbingly similar, and what made his case so alarming was just how visible his downfall was, played out in full view of the entire country. Johnson was born in 1987 in Sunderland, County Durham. He came through Middlesbrough's academy, showed talent that set him apart from his peers.
Great finish
and eventually made it to Manchester City, where he won the FA Cup in 2011 and the Premier League in 2012. He earned 12 caps for England between 2010 and 2012 and was widely considered one of the most exciting wingers of his generation. In 2012, his hometown club Sunderland paid $10 million to bring him back. He was earning $60,000 a week, scoring in Tyne-Wear derbies, and as recently as 2014 was openly talking about an England recall. But behind the scenes, Johnson was living a very different life. In December 2014, while his partner was pregnant with their daughter, Johnson began exchanging messages on social media with a 15-year-old Sunderland fan. He knew she was 15. On January 17, 2015, he met her in his Range Rover and signed shirts for her. 2 weeks later, they met again and he kissed her. He met her once more and, according to the victim's testimony, sexually touched her inside his car behind a restaurant in County Durham. Johnson was arrested on March 2, 2015. What followed was one of the most damaging episodes in English football. Sunderland briefly suspended Johnson, then allowed him to return to the team while the case was ongoing, a decision that drew enormous criticism, especially after it emerged that club executives may have been aware of the situation as early as May 2015. The club's chief executive, Margaret Byrne, later resigned over the matter. When his trial began in February 2016, Johnson admitted 2 of the 4 charges, grooming and 1 count of sexual activity, but denied the more serious accusations. On March 2, 2016, exactly 1 year after his arrest, a jury found him guilty of sexual activity with a child. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison by Judge Jonathan Rose, who said Johnson had caused the victim severe psychological harm and had exploited her adoration of him as a celebrity in a way that was calculated, considered, and carefully orchestrated. He was also ordered to sign the offenders register for life. His Adidas sponsorship was terminated and EA Sports removed his likeness from the FIFA 16 video game. In court, a psychologist quoted Johnson describing the victim as just another girl, just another opportunity. A leaked prison video later showed him laughing about his conviction and suggesting he wished he had gone further. The prison service launched an investigation. The victim, who had to give evidence while Johnson was still publicly claiming innocence, spoke of being bullied, receiving threats online, and entering very dark places. Her mother said the family had endured heartache, criticism, and slanderous remarks. Johnson served 3 years of his 6-year sentence and walked out of HMP Moorland in March 2019. He issued a brief written statement expressing regret and has never returned to professional football. As of 2025, more than 6 years after his release, he remains without a club. The career that once seemed set for greatness ended in complete and permanent disgrace. Johnson used his celebrity to exploit a child. The case of Dani Alves showed the world that even the most decorated player in football history was not beyond the reach of serious criminal allegations. Dani Alves, and that the legal process surrounding such cases can twist and turn in ways that leave everyone unsatisfied. Dani Alves is widely regarded as one of the best right-backs of all time. He won 43 trophies across his career, more than any other outfield player in football history. He spent 8 years at Barcelona from 2008 to 2016, winning 3 Champions Leagues and 6 La Liga titles. He went on to Juventus, PSG, and São Paulo before briefly returning to Barca in 2022. He helped Brazil win the Copa America twice, claimed an Olympic gold medal at the age of 38, and played at 3 World Cups. With 126 international caps, he stood as one of Brazil's most capped players ever. In 2019, he was named the Copa America's best player and led Brazil to the title as captain in Neymar's absence. On December 30th, 2022, Alves attended a party at a nightclub in Barcelona. A 23-year-old woman was also there. According to the victim, she was brought to meet Alves in a VIP area. She said she danced with him and followed him toward a private bathroom. What happened inside, she told police, was She said he slapped her, prevented her from leaving, and forced her to have sex against her will. When she left, her friends saw her crying uncontrollably. Alves was arrested on January 20th, 2023, and kept in custody for over a year. During that time, he changed his version of events at least 5 times. First, he said he didn't know the woman. Then he said nothing happened. Then he claimed the encounter was consensual. Each new account contradicted the last. DNA evidence, fingerprint analysis, and multiple witness testimonies were used during the investigation. In February 2024, a three-judge panel at the Barcelona Provincial Court found Alves guilty of sexual assault and sentenced him to 4.5 years in prison. The court found that the victim did not consent and that evidence beyond her testimony confirmed the crime had occurred. The judges wrote that Alves had grabbed the victim, threw her to the floor, and prevented her from moving, despite her saying no. He was also ordered to pay €150,000 in damages. His wife, Joanna Sanz, had already separated from him in March 2023, publicly stating he had caused her great emotional hurt. In March 2024, after serving 14 months in the Brians 2 prison outside Barcelona, Alves was released on bail of €1 million while his appeal was heard. He handed over his passports, reported to court weekly, and was banned from leaving Spain. Then, in March 2025, the appeal court overturned the conviction unanimously, citing inconsistencies and contradictions in the original verdict and ruling that the victim was an unreliable witness. His lawyer celebrated publicly, but in May 2025, Spanish prosecutors appealed to the Supreme Court, calling the decision erroneous and arbitrary. As of early 2026, the case is still being fought at the highest legal level. Dani Alves spent over a year in a Spanish prison, was convicted of by a Barcelona court, and the legal battle over his name and legacy is far from finished. The cases of Johnson and Alves involved serious crimes that permanently changed lives, but the story of Bruno Fernandes de Sousa is in a category entirely of its own. Bruno Fernandes de Sousa, so horrifying in its details that it dominated headlines across Brazil for years and forced a national reckoning about violence against women. Bruno, as he is simply known in Brazil, was born in 1984 in Ribeirão das Neves. His parents left when he was 3 months old, and he was raised by his grandmother. Football was his way out of poverty. He eventually made it to Flamengo, Brazil's most popular and beloved football club. He became a genuine star almost immediately. In 2007, he made 3 penalty saves in a single shootout to win the Rio de Janeiro State Championship, instantly becoming a fan hero. He won 3 consecutive state titles with the club, became team captain in May 2009, and helped Flamengo win the Campeonato Brasileiro that year, their first national title in 17 years. There were rumors of a big money move to AC Milan. Many believed he was destined to be Brazil's #1 goalkeeper at the 2014 World Cup, which the country would host on home soil. Then came the unthinkable. In May 2009, Bruno met model Elisa Samudio at a party. The two began a relationship despite Bruno being married with children. Elisa became pregnant. Bruno wanted her to have an abortion. She refused. Their son, Bruninho, was born in February 2010. Bruno denied paternity and refused to pay child support. In October 2009, Elisa had already filed a police complaint saying Bruno and his associates kidnapped her and forced her to take substances meant to induce a miscarriage. Bruno denied everything. Elisa was pursuing legal action to force him to accept responsibility for their child. On June 4, 2010, Elisa was lured to Bruno's farm in Minas Gerais under the pretense of negotiating a settlement. She was never seen again. According to testimony from Bruno's teenage cousin, Elisa was beaten at the property, then handed over to a former policeman known as Bola, who strangled her to death in front of her 4-month-old son. Her body was dismembered and fed to Bruno's Rottweilers. Her bones were reportedly encased in concrete. Her body has never been found. The baby, Bruninho, was later discovered abandoned in a favela and placed in the care of Elisa's mother. Bruno was arrested in July 2010. Flamengo immediately suspended his contract. His trial began in November 2012, and in March 2013, he was sentenced to 22 years in prison for ordering Elisa's murder, hiding her body, and kidnapping their son. In February 2017, he was released on a legal technicality while his appeal sat unprocessed for years. Within weeks, second division club Boa Esporte signed him. 3 sponsors immediately pulled out. Protests erupted. He played 5 matches before Brazil's Supreme Court ordered his rearrest in April 2017, ruling that his own legal team was partly responsible for the delays. In July 2019, he entered a semi-open program, and in January 2023, he was released on parole. As of February 2026, Bruno was announced as a signing for Vasco AC. He says he just wants to work. Elisa's mother says she still cannot find her daughter's remains and watches it all in disbelief. Bruno's story is in a class of its own in terms of sheer horror. Lee Hughes proved that a single reckless moment off the pitch can also destroy lives forever, and that running from the consequences makes everything irreversibly worse. Lee Hughes Hughes was born in 1976 in Smethwick, West Midlands. His story is the kind football fans love, a working-class local boy who scraped his way from non-league football while working part-time as a roofer alongside his father. He caught the eye at Kidderminster Harriers, earned a move to his boyhood club West Bromwich Albion in 1997, and became one of the most loved strikers in the English lower divisions. Fans nicknamed him the Ginger Ninja. In the 1998 to 1999 season, he finished as the top scorer across all 4 divisions of English football with 32 goals in 45 games, earned a PFA Team of the Year nomination, and became a genuine cult hero at the Hawthorns. In 2001, Coventry City paid $5 million to sign him, a club record at the time. He later returned to West Brom and helped them earn promotion back to the Premier League in 2003 to 2004, scoring 12 goals in 36 appearances that season. Then, in the early hours of November 23, 2003, everything fell apart. Hughes had played in West Brom's 0-0 draw against Reading that evening. Afterward, he went drinking at 2 pubs near his home, where he consumed shots of Jack Daniels. He then got behind the wheel of his $100,000 Mercedes sports car and drove home. He lost control on a bend and ploughed into an oncoming Renault. A passenger in that car, 56-year-old Douglas Graham, a father of 4, was killed almost instantly. The driver, Albert Frisby, had both knees shattered and spent 3 months in hospital. He has used a wheelchair ever since. Hughes fled the scene on foot. He disappeared for 34 hours before turning himself into police. The judge at his trial said there was only one explanation for running. He knew he had been drinking and would have failed a breath test. Hughes had a previous drink driving conviction from when he was just 18 years old. In August 2004, a jury convicted him of causing death by dangerous driving in just 90 minutes of deliberation. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison. West Brom terminated his contract that same day. Judge Christopher Hodgson's words at sentencing were blunt. "I realise your football career is at an end, but remember that Douglas Graham's life is at an end. In running away, you showed a callous disregard for others." Remarkably, Hughes managed to rebuild much of his career after his release in August 2007. He scored 30 league goals for Notts County in the 2009 to 2010 season, earned another PFA Team of the Year nomination, and continued playing at various clubs well into his 40s. He eventually made a public apology and met with a member of Douglas Graham's family during his time in prison. But Albert Frisby, who was left in a wheelchair by the crash, said Hughes showed no remorse. Douglas Graham's family lost a husband, a father, and a grandfather because of choices Hughes made that night. He chose to drink, chose to drive, and then chose to run. No goals, no trophies, and no comeback can ever undo that reality. Hughes made one terrible decision on one terrible night. Nile Ranger's story is different. Nile Ranger's a long, slow unraveling that began when he was still a teenager and continued all the way through what should have been a promising and exciting career. Ranger was born in 1991 in Wood Green, North London. From a young age, the talent was obvious to anyone who watched him. He came through academies at Crystal Palace and Southampton before landing at Newcastle United, where he made his professional debut at just 17. He scored his first senior goal at 18, helped Newcastle win the Championship title, and return to the Premier League in the 2009 to 2010 season, and represented England at under-19 level, reaching the final of the 2009 UEFA European Under-19 Championship. He signed a 5.5-year contract worth $10,000 a week while still a teenager. Chris Hughton, who managed him at Newcastle, warned him repeatedly that his chances would run out if he didn't change his ways. Kevin Keegan said the same. So did teammates, coaches, and everyone around him. Nobody could get through to him. By his own admission, Ranger was bringing friends down from London to party in Newcastle, ignoring every warning from every manager who worked with him. He was fined by the FA for homophobic comments on Twitter. He was involved in public altercations. He went AWOL from training at Swindon. He went AWOL again at Blackpool. By 2015, he was earning just $150 a week, down from the $10,000 a week he had been making at Newcastle. The drop was staggering, self-inflicted, and entirely preventable. Then came the fraud. In February 2015, Ranger conspired with others to steal the online banking details of a woman named Diane Bloss and transfer $2,090 from her account into another. It wasn't a sophisticated scheme. It was petty and careless, and it targeted a vulnerable person for a sum that wouldn't have covered even a fraction of what he once earned in a single day at Newcastle. The contrast between what he had thrown away and what he was stealing for couldn't have been more stark. In December 2016, he was charged. In January 2017, he pleaded guilty. On May 23, 2017, he was sentenced to 8 months in prison at Wood Green Crown Court. He was released after just 10 weeks due to what the prison described as consistently excellent custodial behavior, and served the rest of his time under a curfew and an electronic tag. It wasn't his first time behind bars either. At the age of 15, he had served 11 weeks in a Young Offenders Institute for his role in an armed street robbery in Muswell Hill, long before his professional career had even begun. 2 prison sentences before the age of 30, both entirely avoidable. After his release from the fraud sentence, Ranger returned to Southend United, scored on his comeback, and was eventually let go in January 2018 due to recurring disciplinary issues. Since then, he has drifted down through the tiers of non-league football. In late 2024, he was playing for Kettering Town in the 7th tier of English football, scoring goals and signing a contract extension. He gave interviews admitting he was wild and had messed it all up. He still insisted he had one big move left in him. As of early 2026, he plays for Chatham Town in the Isthmian League Premier Division, 7 entire tiers below the Premier League, where he once played alongside Michael Owen. A man who had every advantage, every opportunity, and every warning imaginable, chose to ignore all of it. And now he plays in front of a few hundred people in non-league football, still convinced the story isn't over yet. Which of these cases shocked you the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Goal Rivals so you don't miss the next ones.